It's the Security Weekly News, episode 276. I'm Doug White, and welcome to the week of 26 February 2023, on the last day of February, and a snowy day here in Rhode Island. We got ClippyNator, NewsCorp, Lastpass, U.S. Marshals, Houzez, PureCryptor, CyberStrategy, Jason Wood, and more on this edition of the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week, your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News.
How is your business staying one step ahead of cybercriminals? Secure your email, applications, network, and data with Barracuda. Protect your business and go from zero to security in no time flat. Whether your team is working in one location or many, Barracuda has solutions that are easy to buy, deploy, and use. Learn how Barracuda can protect your business against ransomware, phishing, and other cyber attacks. Visit securityweekly.com/Barracuda. That's securityweekly.com/Barracuda. Barracuda, your journey secured. All right, I'm Doug White, and welcome to the Security Weekly News. Well, I always hear about dwell time and calculations of average dwell time and so forth, and I've always wondered if this number had any kind of meaning, really, because, you know, if there's networks where somebody's in there and they never figure it out, that you are in there for long periods of time, well, I don't know what the record is, but NewsCorp, who owns the Wall Street Journal and the New York Post, among other things, which is a really weird combination if you think about it. I mean, the Wall Street Journal headlines something like, "Bond volatility rises as the yen falls against the baht." And the New York Post says, "Alligator boy dating own sister." I mean, you know, so they got kind of a sort of a binomial kind of thing going there. But anyway, NewsCorp announced, or maybe it's NewsCorp, I don't know, NewsCorp announced a breach in January of 2022 that they say had the report they can't release now says that the attackers had persistent access to internals for more than 2 years. So they went on to say that employee names, dates of birth, social security numbers, pretty much everything had been compromised because, you know, if somebody's in your network for 2 years, I mean, come on. IBM's 2022 breach report said that organizations took an average of 277 days to identify and contain breaches. I mean, that sounds like a long time to me, but this was more than 2 years. So I don't think they actually know how long this was going on, but they said more than 2 years. So, you know, I would say 9 months is pretty long, but it's not really surprising. I mean, a lot of staff are overworked and understaffed, so noticing subtle things, if the attackers are really, you know, just like being very, you know, cautious, is not going to happen when the building's burning down around everybody else, so it just doesn't get picked up. So, you know, it's definitely maybe time to review that kind of thing, because you probably don't want people with dwell times even of 9 months sitting in your network, because they're going to get whatever they want in that amount of time. Lastpass, I hate to even say it, Lastpass got breached in December. Yeah, they did, and we talked about that a lot. And the attackers in December got access to partially encrypted password vault data and customer information. But now, Lastpass has disclosed how the breach was actually performed. And they said about the worst thing you can say about a breach. Quote, "They used information they obtained when we got breached back in August." You know, I mean, that's just about the worst possible thing you have to admit is like, yeah, we got breached, but oh yeah, the reason we got breached was because we got breached before and they got all this stuff. So apparently back in August of 2022 that they got information, then they used that earlier information from another data breach on another third party, and a remote code execution vulnerability, which allowed a keylogger to be installed on a senior DevOps. There's 4 DevOps engineers at Lastpass, a senior DevOps engineer's home computer. And the DevOps engineers had access to the decryption keys, and so they were being targeted. Now, they went on and said that they didn't apparently get what they really wanted, which was, of course, the decryption keys for the Lastpass database. But they used all this to wait until the engineer authenticated and cleared the multi-factor authentication, and then they used their password to gain access to the engineer's vault. So That got them encrypted notes, which had access and decryption keys, which, of course, would allow you then to break other things. And that got them into the AWS S3 repository, which had production backups and other cloud-based information about LastPass. LastPass played down this incident pretty heavily. They had put the no index tag on all the pages that had these various reports on it and so forth, so that it wouldn't come up. And if you search for LastPass breach, you were not going to get these reports. But there is a link in this article that I posted that has the report. It has recommended actions for various and sundry different levels of use of LastPass and so forth. So if you do use LastPass, or you administer LastPass at your organization, you may want to check this out and see what they're recommending, because you're not going to get it in a search. The U.S. Marshals Service is investigating a breach on their systems after a ransomware attack. And the U.S. Marshals Service is one of those things that people don't really think about very often. And, of course, one of their big operations, of course, is the Witness Protection Program. But the U.S. Marshals said that the system was a, quote, standalone U.S. Marshals Service system, end quote. I don't know what that means. But the announcement then said that the stolen data included employee personal identifiable information. They said that the event occurred on the 17th of February and contained returns from legal processes, administrative information, PII, and other third-party information from that. And then they said the server was disconnected from their network, which seems to kind of contradict it being a standalone server. I mean, like it's on the network, but it's standalone. Anyway. But they said they are investigating the attack as a major incident. The report did go on to say that the Witness Protection Service, so if any of you are in the Witness Protection Service, was not breached. And witness protection is, of course, where Tony Soprano gets renamed Alan Abelman and lives in Manhattan, Kansas, and works at a feed store or something. But they did say that was not compromised. The U.S. Marshals Service had a previous breach back in 2019, so this is another hit for them. Houzez, or Houzez, I don't know how you say it, so Houzez, it ends in a Z, is a WordPress theme for the real estate industry. The theme has more than 35,000 sales on ThemeForest and allows agencies to easily manage content and listings on their real estate WordPress sites. PatchStack announced that the Houzez and Houzez login register plugin have critical vulnerabilities in them. Apparently, some of it is about a registration functionality. Initially, the article made it sound like it was a pretty easy thing, but then they later went on and started talking about, grabbing nonces and all this kind of stuff, which made it sound like it wasn't as easy as it first sounded. But what they said initially was that the registration functionality of this theme, which is not enabled by default, but a lot of people enable it so that people can register on the site, allows customers to create an account, and we've all been there, and it allows the setting of a role for that account. So if the user sets their role to administrator, I mean, that's what I'm going to choose if I get an option. Well, Bob's your uncle, and now you're in charge. PatchStack said they had observed attempts to exploit this vulnerability in the wild, and that both the theme and the plugin were being targeted, but that the plugin was being targeted more heavily than the theme. So if you're using any of those components, you may want to check out that article and look about, either disabling some of this functionality or checking on the patch status of it, because it sounded pretty bad. Well, Dole Corporation, which is, I didn't know this. Apparently, it's based in Ireland, but it's famously, at least in the U.S., associated with pineapples, which is, to me, about the most non-Irish thing I can imagine. I mean, when I think of pineapples, I don't think of Ireland, and when I think of Ireland, I don't think of pineapples. And and although, I'll have to ask Aaron about it the next time he's on, because I don't know, maybe they're growing pineapples in County Longford or something, and it's a big Irish thing. I just didn't realize was like, the Irish. I don't think it really is, but anyway, they got ransomware. So the statement was posted last week, and it said that Dole was apparently dealing with a cybersecurity incident involving ransomware, and that law enforcement and external security were working to deal with it. A grocery store in Texas said, and this sounded pretty weird too, that the Dole ransomware attack was causing a shortage in prepackaged salads, and that's why. So don't complain. I mean, but I think Dole makes all that. They make prepackaged salad, they make pineapple, they make all kinds of stuff, but they are based in Ireland. So Dole's memo to customers said that they had to shut down systems throughout North America but there's little information about what ransomware was used or who had done it at this time. And they had gone on and looked at like all these different groups to see if they were claiming responsibility for it. But so far, nobody's come forward and said this was our ransomware attack. So it may just be one of those ransomware as a service type attacks. I guess in the meantime, Ireland, the Irish nation will have to eat crisps or something in lieu of their beloved pineapples. But I do know Dole they have other products. Just leave me alone. PureCryptor downloader is being used to deliver malware to government entities in Asia and North America, according to Menlo Labs. The loader is being distributed via Discord with the domain of a nonprofit organization being used as the command and control server. So that means that when you see those postings on Discord or you get messages from Discord, be very, very careful because they are using a compromised nonprofit who I guess doesn't know their domain has been compromised so they can, send and receive things. Most of the malware they have delivered with this to date has been info stealers, rats, and this is a downloader, so they can pretty much install whatever. So far, Redline Stealer, Agent Tesla, Eternity, Black Moon, and Philadelphia have all been used in various attacks. PureCryptor has been available for purchase since March of 2021, so you can actually buy this product and use it. The product is written in .NET. It's basically a loader which has a whole bunch of different approaches to obfuscation and defense so that you can't detect it. In the observed attack that Menlo Labs was reporting on, PureCryptor was being hosted on Discord, and an email was sent with a link to the payload. The downloader then downloads itself, installs itself, and it's hidden in password-protected zip files. In this particular case, the secondary payload that came off to command and control was Agent Tesla, which is a well-known info stealer malware. Agent Tesla was apparently communicating with an FTP server in Pakistan and was uploading exfiltrated government data from North America and Asia. So, who knows who's really behind this. Well, the United States is about to release their cybersecurity strategy document, which we talked about more than a week ago with Derek. But this strategy document is apparently going to approve. This is what Slate said about it now. The document is going to approve mandatory regulation on critical infrastructure vendors, and it's going to approve a more aggressive hackback approach for dealing with foreign attackers, which is a pretty big change in the U.S. government's posture about this. A lot of foreign governments have long, encouraged hacking and hacking, enemies abroad or whatever. But this is the first time the U.S. is going to go on record and say, hey, our strategy is to do just that. It's a 35-page document, but it's still being finalized by the Biden administration. High-level authorization to law enforcement and intelligence agencies is being provided so that they will be able to hack into foreign networks to prevent attacks or to retaliate against advanced persistent threat campaigns. Sounds really, dangerous and scary to me to be encouraging all these things and saying, hey, you got free reign to go ahead. Obviously, within the boundaries of the United States, there are protections under the Constitution, but it's not clear how this stuff's going to impact groups that have U.S. presences and non-U.S. presences. It did not have any information about, are they going to have to get warrants to do this? Are they going to have to go to some private tribunal or some private court? Or is it just going to be, the Wild West all of a sudden? So I guess that will be more evident, and I'm sure we'll have more reports on it when the strategy document, which is not a law, mind you, it is a strategy document, but when that actually comes out, exactly what it's going to say. U.S. President Joe Biden is expected to sign this statement. So again, it's not a law. It's not been approved by the U.S. Congress. It's just a strategy document from the executive branch of the U.S. government. But Biden is expected to sign this strategy statement in the next week or so when they, get around to agreeing to whatever it says. Well, in the 1970s, he starred as Detective Robin Harris on the hit comedy Vice Cops. Detective Harris was famous for being a little too eager to go undercover as a prostitute, had a drinking problem, a gambling problem, and a smoking problem. The network said the character was too complicated for a comedy, and one of the most watched episodes of 1974, Detective Harris died from an allergic reaction to latex and was written off the show. Please welcome Detective Harris, or Jason Wood.
Hey, everybody. That must have looked interesting with me as a toddler doing that.
It's Detective Baby Legs from Rick and Morty.
Oh, my goodness. Run around with a cigar or something like that while I'm doing it. Anyhow, While I was preparing for today's show, I actually read an article by Brian Krebs. It was released a couple of days ago that really nailed one of the uncomfortable problems that we have in security. And he had it right in the headline, which is low-tech hacks resulting in high-impact breaches. Why do we have old and fairly straightforward attacks ended up resulting in some really high severity intrusions and data being compromised and things like that? Now, Krebs is using GoDaddy as his example for his article, and that's what he's focusing on. But if you've listened to the show and you're paying attention to the news, we could substitute just about any company in here. When we talked about, we just talked about Dole and their problems right now. So there you go. But we'll go along with GoDaddy today for the purposes of the show. A couple of weeks ago, basically, GoDaddy disclosed they've been under attack for several years and have been coming out second best, at least in some scenarios, in their fight here with this intruder. At this point, the attacker has stolen customer and employee credentials, source code, private keys for TLS certificates, which is really great if you want to sniff traffic, and have been able to log in and modify customers' cPanel systems, which is like the web-based admin control, to redirect the users for customers to malicious sites. Now it's tempting, possibly, and maybe some folks at GoDaddy are hoping that, or you could picture somebody in the middle of an intrusion hoping that hey, we've announced this. This means that we're done. We've got our arms around this and we've stopped the intruder. But probably this is just going to be another event in a continued campaign against them. They did say that this was a sophisticated actor, which is a nice thing that the lawyers like to toss in to make it sound less bad. So what were these low-tech attacks or hacks against GoDaddy? Well, right now we have to look back on past announcements. They've released a number of statements about intrusions in the past, 2020, 2021, I think, 2022, about things that have occurred. And Krebs points to a disclosure from GoDaddy back in about a March 2020 intrusion that occurred due to a spear phishing attack against a GoDaddy employee. That basically turned into the attacker then turned around and calling GoDaddy customers and pretending to be a GoDaddy employee and getting them to try and authorize changes in their account. And the person who was talking to the attacker actually recorded the call and was talking about their experience. And they said they thought that it was a scam, hence the reason they decided to record it. But they played along for a while, and this went for a bit. The attacker is apparently reading notes from their account that from GoDaddy's system to lend credibility to what they're saying and prove that we're legit and stuff like that. Finally, when the victim called out the attacker as being a scammer, the attacker admitted that yes they were, and they weren't from GoDaddy, but they were part of a group that had been doing these attacks against GoDaddy using social engineering for a while with repeated success. So in the end, it appears that you have attacks against GoDaddy being successful because somebody sent a malicious email to people and it worked. And we've been hearing about this now for years and years. This is nothing new. Or somebody calls up the victim and the intruder tricks them into doing something on their behalf that they didn't. They thought that they were talking to IT and they weren't. None of these are new. To step back from GoDaddy and just kind of look at things overall and stories that we've talked about, we see these two happening all the time. Or there was a password attack where they did a brute force password, guessing attack against a system and logged in. It was an unpatched system, or they had a vulnerable web application that became an initial foothold, and then the attacker kept going from there. Again, none of these. This is something we're constantly dealing with, and And the attackers keep using them because it keeps working over and over again. And security has poured tons of money into this, and we're still getting exploited. I mean, I remember being a sysadmin and you had the race against the 0-day or the latest exploit because Patch Tuesday was out, and we needed to deploy this across our environment. I'd like to say that there's an easy answer here, but if there was, we'd have already hit it. My own view is one that, initial intrusions, that's just going to happen. Somebody's going to exploit something or get somebody to click a link, and we're going to kick off some kind of intrusion at that point. Now, there's a difference between something being an intrusion and turning into a breach. We could end up with somebody's laptop being compromised, and as long as we don't have too much data that shouldn't be there on that laptop, we can contain that. As long as we're watching and looking for it. I really like, and I've always liked, Richard Balick's statement from the Tao of Network Security Monitoring, which is prevention eventually fails. And that was a statement from 2004. And 18 years later, I think it's proven fairly true. So what can we do? Well, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not terribly easy, in my opinion. I mean, you got a couple of things that we got to deal with. First, organizations need to accept that they could come under attack, sustained attack for months, maybe years if you're high enough profile, like let's say GoDaddy, who has, thousands and thousands of customers who are interesting of themselves. If your organization is of any size, it probably has something that is of interest to an attacker, and they may just decide to keep coming at you. And our organizations need to be prepared for that. That gets to be demoralizing. It's a lot of political heat around it and stuff like that, but it can happen. We can continue just fighting the battle with an intruder that just doesn't want to go away. The second is we need to be watching all the time. And I don't mean having an automated system that is watching for us and sends an email or a text message or something like that when something goes bump in the night. We can't check the logs once or twice a week. I look at a lot of intrusions that, somebody logs in and they start behaving differently. None of the commands are inherently malicious themselves, but they're unusual. And why are they occurring? And so looking for things like that. Why are they doing, how many of your users log in and then immediately start checking their network configuration and enumerating domain trusts and things like that? I like the idea of, basically this kind of threat hunting style of things is what I'm focused on, I guess, because that to me is you have somebody, call it what you want. Somebody's always watching. They're always looking at articles that have been released when you talk about infrastructure or techniques that adversaries are using, and then going out and seeing if they can find that. What do we have the visibility to see when somebody clicks on an email and executes a phishing payload? What happens next? If we don't have that visibility, how do we get it? And then what does it look like when it gets executed? How do we go look for that? This takes a lot of work. This is frequently not very exciting work when you're practicing and preparing this. You're sitting there just constantly watching for something that hopefully never happens. But it is necessary, and we need to practice for it. Last thing you want is to be learning how to respond to an intrusion while you're on fire. And I can speak with some experience on that one. It's not a good experience at all. All of that preparation and work does put us in a better position, though, to respond when we've got a new vulnerability that comes with a marketing department or something like that, and everybody gets hyped up about it. We're looking. We've got the telemetry. We're actively looking for signs of post-compromise activity, whatever the exploit may be, and then that gives us puts us in a much better position to detect when somebody's exploited it and then turn around and contain them on the network. The adversaries, even sophisticated ones, use low-tech hacks because they work, and they're not very difficult. Why work hard or why burn a 0-day when there's no need to? So yeah, it's just too common. The attackers are using tried and true. They're using phishing. They're using password guessing and things like that. What does that look like? What does it look like when somebody logs in and starts poking around the network? In spite of their age, the age of these attack vectors and their common usage, we're still reading about this occurring. So this is, I think it was just kind of not a wake-up call because we've had it so many times, but calling out the elephant in the room, which is just, hey guys, we still have this problem of low-tech attacks being wildly successful, and what can we do about that? And to me, at least that's where I fall back onto, is the idea of prevention failing. How are we positioned to respond to that, and can we stop that initial intrusion from turning into a full-blown breach? Take a look at the article if that interests you, and if you have any thoughts on it, let me know what you think.
All right. Thank you, Jason. And finally, if you're using Windows 11, you're going to get the Bing chatbot, whether you like it or not. A Windows update that is coming out today, if it's not already out, will push the Bing bot onto your taskbar with that update. So you're going to get your own AI search engine if you install this update on there, and apparently it's not an option to install. The Bing bot's been pretty controversial, along with all the other chat bots that have come out. This is Microsoft's move into the search engine. They've been in the search engine business, but they want to change Bing from being the search to being this AI bot. And it's, all of them have been kind of controversial. They're also adding apparently some of this AI to the start menu so that when you are typing in the search bar, you're going to get file suggestions, folder suggestions, and so forth based on this AI. So get ready for the new Clippy. A long time ago, I hated Clippy so much back when it was out there, and I offered extra credit to my gaming students. I used to teach this game programming class, and I offered them extra credit if somebody would just write me a code that would just grab Clippy when it popped up, tie it into knots or break it into little pieces or something and devour it, or even better, melt it down into nails I could drive into a post and leave forever and all eternity. But I still wake up screaming the name Clippy sometimes, and now Clippy's going to be the Terminator of your nightmares, popping up on your screen to go, hey, could I suggest something for you? Well, anyway, happy Tuesday. But that's the news. Thanks, Jason, and I'll see you this Friday on the Security Weekly News.